morning, everybody. Good morning. I just really quick have to do something because it's a tradition. Hi, Johnny. That's Pat Coker's grandson, and when he visits, I have to embarrass him. Even though he's getting taller than I am, and he can probably beat me up for it now. So, it's the end of January already, can you believe it? And as is always the case, the beginning of a new year, we cover the first 4 chapters in the Science of Mind textbook. And every once in a while, there are 5 Sundays in January. We had the situation last year, and I think Reverend Jane and I handled it quite well, so we were invited back to do it again. Actually, I control the schedule, so that was an easy one. So, how many of you have been here every Sunday this month? Okay, well, we're on YouTube, we've got CDs, so it's a great thing to have each one of the talks so that you can follow along and set your course for 2011. And most of you know this already, but it bears repeating that the first 4 Roman numeral chapters in the Science of Mind textbook comprise the most brilliant yet simple treatise ever written on metaphysics. And we could conceivably read pages 25 through 60 and stop right there, because those pages contain enough wisdom for us to apply and live very powerfully as metaphysicians. So we could stick to the basics. But most of us in this teaching, we love to study, we love to read, we love to be in class, we love to assimilate the information and look at it from different angles and continually expand our knowledge. So that's why we come back week after week to Sunday talks, to classes, to special events, because we really love to hang out with each other, don't we? Yeah. And why do you think that is? Because we're the coolest and the smartest and all of that. But here's what I think. When we hear the word of truth spoken, it is irresistible to us, and we can't get enough. And that's why we want to be with people of like mind, because this is where we're guaranteed to hear talk of truth, right? So here we are. This morning I want to do just a brief synopsis of each chapter, and then we're going to talk about bring it on, which means how do we apply what we've learned this month to the rest of our year. So the thing itself, of course, Roman numeral chapter 1. 2 key points to be made here, the first of which is that our teaching is the study of a principle. On page 26, Dr. Holmes writes, "Whatever the nature of any principle may be, insofar as it is understood by anyone, it may be understood by all who take time to investigate. This does not require an unusual degree of intelligence." There's some good news. But rather, a practical application of what we now know in order that we may increase our knowledge. It sounds like he's saying we garner knowledge and then we apply it in order to garner yet even more knowledge. So how smart can we get? Really, really smart, apparently. So every time we learn and apply, we expand our consciousness to receive more knowledge. All right, so the study of science of mind is an examination of the power behind all creation, which is the thing itself. And there's more to the thing itself, which we will discover. The second key point is that there is a limitless power at our disposal. If we have not been using all of it up until now, it's time to ramp it up. It's time to bring it on. How do we do that? If we've only been tapping into a little bit of it, how do we do that? How do we increase our use of it? Well, for starters, we have to be perfectly clear about the role of conscious mind. Conscious mind is the mind we think with when we're aware, when we're awake. The thoughts we're having and we know we're having. That's our conscious mind working. There are lots of different names for it. Emma Curtis Hopkins refers to it sometimes as mortal mind. That would be the mind of a human being, right? As opposed to immortal mind, the mind of God. She also calls it carnal intellect, the carnal intellect. That's pretty provocative, isn't it? Yeah. But think about its opposite, which would be the spiritual intellect. That's God. The carnal intellect is our human individual mind. Regardless of what we call it, Emma says that our conscious mind is not the self with a capital S, the higher self. It's merely a shadow of the self. Consciously, we only have access to the shadow because the self is out on a mission. Think about that. Our higher self is on a mission. It is doing something. It's working. Okay? What kind of mission do we want our higher self to be on? We're the only ones who get to decide that because we have control of our higher self. We are the only ones who can direct it. And it's better if we do this awake and aware. So our higher self is synonymous with subconscious mind. Okay? And our subconscious mind is our very own individual, unique, personal, exclusive access point to the law of mind. Holmes says the greatest discovery of all time is that we can use our conscious mind to control the law of mind. And this is true because the mind within us is the mind that governs everything. Again, this is the thing itself. Now, the way Dr. Holmes explains it at the end of chapter 1 incorporates both realization and unification. So realization meaning it's God, unification meaning it's us as part of God. So he's not just saying the thing itself. If you read those last few lines carefully, he's not just saying the thing itself is divine principle or God or spirit or infinite intelligence. He's saying that, yes, and that we're a part of it, that we're one with it, we're created by it. And we can flesh that out in our own minds and have it look any way we want to, whatever unification means for us. Now, we can't stop there because it does feel really good to say we're one with God, doesn't it? And we could make a career out of contemplating that point alone because the possibilities are endless. But our metaphysical forebears did not hand this knowledge down to us just so we could feel good about ourselves. Along with the knowledge, they handed down to us a responsibility to actually do something with it. So yes, we're created out of the love of the universe, and we're one with it. But we are also one with the law of the universe, and those are inseparable. So once we wrap our heads around the idea of the thing itself, what follows is our need and our desire to understand the way it works, which brings us to chapter 2. Now, we don't need to know how divine law works in order to know that it does work, because it's always working, and with or without our recognition or comprehension of it, it's working. But it serves us better if we understand how it works and put it to use effectively. We might as well work with it. When I lived in Los Angeles, I was a much more avid cyclist than I am now. And I trained for centuries with a group of women riders. And I was one of the youngest and one of the strongest, so I was pretty much faster than everybody except one other woman, and on the flats, we were kind of neck and neck. And then when we reached a hill, I would pass her every time. I would leave her in the dust. And at the end, she'd be walking her bicycle up a hill. And it occurred to me at some point that I didn't really hear her gears clicking as she went up the hill, and I'm clicking, clicking, clicking all the way. I'm just getting every bit of power out of that 27th gear to try to make it to the top. So I asked her about it. She said, well, I only have 9 gears. I said, You've got a really expensive bike. How can that be? I said, I have 27 and I use every one of them. So she didn't know that she had more gears, and I showed her how she has another shifter and that each one of those has 3 settings, and that 9 times 3 is 27. So pretty soon, she's shifting and using all of them, and pretty soon she's passing me going up the hill, and then I thought, well, I should have kept my big mouth shut. But life is easier, isn't it, when we use our resources to their full potential. And once we realize we have the power, we get to create our experience, and we get to determine our destiny, it's time to actually exercise that God-given right. It's not enough to know it. But once we do know it, gone are the days of being miserable or thrilled about what happens to us. Because nothing happens to us, does it? We have to acknowledge that everything that happens can only happen through us. The good, the bad, and alas, the ugly. But let's not forget the beautiful. And as we expand our consciousness, we come to see that it's all beautiful, that all creation is beautiful because all creation is God. In fact, God is creation. Think about it. Where would God be without its creation? Well, everywhere, presumably, but as yet unexpressed. It needs us, right? Spirit, being source and substance, requires an outlet, and we are that outlet. So everything that happens through us, and everything that happens is spirit happening through us. In this chapter, Dr. Holmes writes, the life we live is the universal life expressing through us. Else, how could we live? Yes, and else, how could it live? That's a little tag I wrote out in the margin 20 years ago. Else, how could it live? God creates us out of itself, and we live and move and have our being in it. But let us not forget that this relationship is inevitably reciprocal. God also lives, moves, and has its being in us. 2 weeks ago, I said it gives life to us, and we give life to it. To paraphrase Paramahansa Yogananda, if we were to cease being active in cosmic creation, the universe itself would cease to exist. So that makes us pretty important, doesn't it? In fact, we're crucial to the unfoldment of divine life. The divine works for us by working through us. And it becomes our power when we recognize it as power. So from here, we fuel its power with our receptivity. Little receptivity equals little power. Big receptivity equals big power. How many want little power? Nobody wants little power, right? We all want big power. We're power hungry.